Who was the biggest war criminal to pass through the city? And who are the 5 local war heroes you may never have heard of? Find out now in this episode of Astonishing Glasgow. This episode of Remembrance starts with a drive out towards the moors around Eaglesham, and a look back to the night of May the 10th, 1941. Britain and their allies were a year and a half into World War II against Germany. On the evening of May the 10th, the ploughman David McLean from Fleur's farm near Eaglesham heard a loud crash from a nearby field, and as he went out to investigate, he saw a man parachute to the ground wearing a German uniform. David McLean duly apprehended the pilot with the most advanced anti-German weapon available to him at that time.
I went over to the farm and the only weapon I could find was a pitchfork.
This is Fleur's farm where David brought his prisoner. When David brought him here and offered him a cup of tea, he had no idea that he had captured the second highest ranking member of the Nazi Party. You could say he was Adolf Hitler's right-hand man. The downed pilot introduced himself as Hauptmann Albert Horn. The pilot had landed roughly in this area next to Fleur's farm. And the site where the Messerschmitt Bf 110 landed is just a little bit further away on the opposite side of the A726, the Glasgow Southern Orbital Road. Going by this picture, I think the field where the plane came down was roughly here. It is now a dog exercising field, and the road beside it is cut off by the new Glasgow Southern Orbital. Hess, or Horn as he was calling himself, was held at Fleur's farm until the police and the Home Guard arrived. He kept saying that he had an important message for the Duke of Hamilton, but that could wait. That evening he was taken to the headquarters of the local Home Guard right here in Busby. The plane wreckage was salvaged and some of the parts are now in the Imperial War Museum in London. Some of the parts were hidden on David McLean's farm and sold to an American collector after the war. An engine from the plane exists at the Scottish National Museum of Flight in East Fortune, but a lot closer to home, there is one small part right here in Astonishing Glasgow at the Glasgow Police Museum on Bell Street. Hess spent the night in Busby, and on May the 11th he was transferred to Maryhill Barracks, where the Duke of Hamilton met with him. The Maryhill Barracks used to stand right here, and behind these walls, Hess claimed he was here to broker a peace treaty. His claim was that if Churchill stepped down, Britain would be allowed to rule the seas and the Empire, but Germany would continue to rule Central Europe. At least, that's what Hess proposed. Most of the details of Hess's mission are completely classified and locked up until 2041 at the very earliest. Hess became a prisoner of war, held briefly at the Tower of London and then at a prisoner of war camp in Wales until the end of the war. He was then tried at Nuremberg for his war crimes and jailed for life, but he hanged himself in Spandau prison in 1987, aged 93. As I'm here in Maryhill, I should tell you more about the barracks and the 5 heroes of Astonishing Glasgow that should definitely be remembered. The barracks were opened in 1872. They then grew to cover 30 acres when they became the new barracks of the Glasgow City Corporation in 1876. This was unusual because in 1876, Maryhill was not yet part of Glasgow and was a borough in its own right. During the 1919 general strike, which I talked about in episode 20, the soldiers at Maryhill Barracks were locked in behind the walls, as there was a risk that they would side with the striking workers. The barracks were decommissioned in 1959, and apart from the perimeter wall, they were almost completely destroyed to become the Winford housing estate. But there are still military links if you know where to look. The barracks stretched from Maryhill Road to the River Kelvin, so the Winford estate is pretty big. You have already seen the Winford High Flats in episode 59. They currently stand near the River Kelvin side of the estate, but as I make this video in November 2024, they are being prepared for demolition, so they will soon be gone. The 5 tower blocks I'm going to focus on are at the Maryhill Road side of the Winford estate. I'm going to enter the estate through the old main gates of the barracks, right across the road from Maryhill Police Station, and the first block we will talk about is on the right at number 80 Glenfinnan Road. In the doorway you'll find a plaque in memory of Sergeant James Turnbull VC of the Highland Light Infantry. They were stationed here in Maryhill Barracks until it closed in 1959, when the Highland Light Infantry were amalgamated with the Royal Highland Fusiliers. Sergeant Turnbull was awarded a Victoria Cross for bravery in the First World War, when on July the 1st, 1916, he maintained his position and almost single-handedly defended his post. He was killed later that same day, but was a recipient of the highest military award for valour, the Victoria Cross. His story is told in the doorway of 80 Glenfinnan Road, but there are 4 more tower blocks and 4 more Victoria Cross recipients mentioned in the estate. A short wander to 110 Glenfinnan Road and the story of Corporal David F. Hunter, VC. He was awarded his Victoria Cross for defending his position against enemy attack for 3 days. For 2 of those days he had no food or water. He survived the war and died on the 14th of February 1965. Our tour of Victoria Cross recipients continues at 130 Glenfinnan Road and the story of Lance Corporal John B. Hamilton VC. On the 25th and 26th of September 1917, whilst in Belgium, he risked his life dodging enemy fire to supply ammunition to the front lines in full view of the enemy snipers and machine gunners. His fearlessness and devotion to duty inspired those around him, and for that he was awarded the Victoria Cross. He was also able to survive the Second World War and died at the age of 77. All these men would have served here when it was still an active barracks, and amazingly, we still have more heroes to meet. At number 61 Glenfinnan Road is the story of Lieutenant Walter L. Brodie, VC. His act of valour took place on November the 11th, 1914, almost exactly 110 years before I'm making this video. He headed the charge to recapture British trenches that had fallen to the enemy. 80 Germans were killed and 51 were taken prisoner. Brodie was promoted to lieutenant after this day, but he was killed in action on the 23rd of August 1918 and is buried in France. Now there's one last block to visit. It's across the road and it's possibly the saddest story of them all. At number 60 Glenfinnan Road is the memorial to Lieutenant Colonel William Herbert Anderson, VC. William, who was known as Bertie, received his Victoria Cross for gathering the remaining men of his 2 companies together during an enemy attack in the woods near Maryhill in France. He led them in a counter-attack and drove the Germans from the woods, capturing 12 machine guns and 70 prisoners. Later the same day he led another counter-attack, driving the enemy from his position, but during this he lost his life. The really sad part of this story is that Lieutenant Colonel William Bertie Anderson was one of 4 brothers who grew up on Lansdowne Crescent in the West End of Glasgow. All 4 brothers lost their lives while serving in World War I. If you want to know more about the brothers, Bertie's great-grandson Robin Scott Elliot wrote the novel The Way Home based on the brothers' story, which was published in 2007. So not the most light-hearted edition of Astonishing Glasgow, but it is important that we do remember those who died for our benefit. A huge thank you again to Roger Edwards for tipping me off about this story. And if you have a story you think I should tell, get in touch through the comments or via the Facebook and Instagram pages. I can't guarantee I'll get to the story anytime soon, but I will definitely put it on the list. I will post pictures of the plaques on my Facebook and Instagram pages so that if you want you can read through the text, or you could even go and visit them for yourself. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit that like and subscribe button. It really helps my channel grow. If you would like to help me tell more stories of Astonishing Glasgow, please hit that super thanks button and donate what you can. Every penny is very much appreciated. And these are the medal winners who donated after the last episode. Thank you all very much for watching. I will see you next time in Astonishing Glasgow. Right, I'm away for some trench cake and a cup of George. See ya.